So just so everyone knows, I'm recording and it'll be going on YouTube. Okay, I guess we can begin, and I'll start admitting people as they join. So thank you so much for doing this for us, for our fitness journeys. I've met you two before when I used to live in Washington, D.C., so it's great to see you guys again. So for those in the room who don't know you, can you just share a little bit about yourselves and your field of work and how you got into that field of work? Maybe we can start with you, Marianne, and then we can go ahead and ask Marynet the same question.
Okay. Hi everybody. I'm Marianne for the FOBs. I am a licensed clinical mental health resident. So that means I've been practicing for quite a few years. I did private practice, worked with age groups from 6 years old up until 26 before I hopped over to government level crisis centers. And now I work for Loudoun County Mental Health Emergency Services. During my time in private practice, I worked with a lot of kids, family therapy, different cultures, and just kind of guiding a lot of family members and again, kids and individuals through the identity crisis they're having if they have multiple cultures in their family systems, things like that. I saw a lot of individuals with varying diagnoses, of course, from anxiety, depression to mood disorders, personality disorders, so borderline narcissism. I also worked with and led group therapy sessions for offenders and victims of domestic violence, both court-ordered and those who volunteered for it. And it was both for male and female offenders. We also had victims as well. And now during my crisis work, I pretty much see anybody that walks through the door of an emergency room, either by law enforcement in handcuffs or by family members. If they're experiencing extreme psychosis, they're seeing things, they're acting very aggressively, they've just attempted suicide, things like that. So I see individuals really at their worst. I evaluate them, and if I find after my evaluation they require inpatient treatment and they're not willing to do so on their own, then I work with law enforcement, the courts and all of that to then hospitalize them, and we move forward from there where they have a legal court hearing. I've been in the field for about 5 years now, which is crazy to think. Feels like it just started yesterday. Yeah, that's me. That's Marianne for now.
Yeah. And Marynet, if you can tell the audience who you are and your field of work.
Yeah, so I'm Marynet. I am 1 week and a half away from finally completing my doctorate, so that will be coming soon. But I have seen clients for about 4 years now. I do assessments. So for individuals who might think they have ADHD, learning disability, or just kind of trying to narrow down what kind of disorder they have and get better treatment recommendations, I do that. I have worked in schools where I've worked with like IEPs, 504 plans, and just supporting students in their school environment. For the past 2 years, I have been more focused on trauma. So last year, I was at a child advocacy center where I just saw a lot of children and teenagers who are in the court system, foster care, or just have a history of trauma in general. And this year, I am also in a community mental health right now, seeing people of all ages with trauma. Actually, every single person that comes in has to have a history of sexual abuse. So I see a lot of that. But it's a community that is low income, um, diversity, so they come with a lot more trauma than that, unfortunately. So that has been kind of my niche. But even with that, I've also seen people who have substance use, depression, anxiety, just self-identity, boundaries. So I've kind of worked in the realms of a lot of that as well. So I think that kind of sums it up.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. This is such like while hearing all that, I'm like, wow, this is such like we have such wealth of knowledge in the room. And so happy you two are here today with us, sharing your experiences. And you can, even today, mental health is almost in so many discussions today in our fitness journey chats. Every day we're talking about, most days we're talking about breakups, how does this affect you, doing the work to get over breakups. I mean, you guys are in the chat, you guys see it sometimes. Even today, I believe today we were talking about self-awareness. And that was actually one of the topics I wanted to hit on today. So, but before we go to that, let's start with like sort of like the elephant in the room, because the topic of our chat today was mental health in Arab culture. And I'm just going to throw out the first question. There's a presumption here that mental health in the Arab world is still taboo. Still, you don't want to talk about it. That's the presumption. Now, you guys are in the field, you're on the ground, you're really, this is your work. So is that presumption still accurate? Is it still the case, or has it gotten better? What are you seeing and hearing?
So one thing I could definitely speak to during my private practice times, because with that, individuals can be far more selective with who they want to see, is yes, absolutely. It is very taboo. Individuals from the Arab community do not want to seek out therapy out of fear of, well, what if I know this person? Or what if they tell me to do something, or they don't understand my culture and they're instructing me to do things that I shouldn't do. So for example, oh, you feel your parents are helicopter parents, they're telling you to do too much, they have all the control in the world. A therapist who doesn't fully understand the Arab or Middle Eastern culture is going to say, oh, easy, just move out, easy, just put up boundaries. Those words do not exist, nor is that really allowed in a lot of the Arab households. So the taboo is, it's present, it's there, it's very much alive. And the unfortunate part is not a lot of clinicians out there that are not inside this Arab community are aware of how heavy the culture and even religion itself impacts individuals. So the advice and the guidance that we can provide, even when I'm providing therapy to a fellow Middle Easterner, I cannot put in my Middle Eastern bias. I have to almost go by the book and the ethics and things like that. So it's, I can share, I can guide, I can help to a certain extent, even though I can sometimes understand exactly what they're talking about. I can't say, oh, yeah, forget the boundaries thing. Like, your parents are never going to listen to that. Just ignore that. That's not something we can say, even though we know realistically that's a fact. And now in my crisis work, it's the only time I'm going to seek out help is if I am absolutely in dire need, if I just attempted to harm myself or kill myself. And even during those times when I'm speaking to the family members of the individual that was brought into the hospital or brought into the jails, they're just like, oh, they're fine. We'll just take them home. We'll take care of them. They don't have to talk to anybody. They're okay. It's just a temporary thing. We'll figure it out. So I see heavy loads of that. But it is slowly getting out there. At least I can speak to St. Mark Coptic Orthodox Church. The priests are trying to push as hard as they can to advocate for mental health. And they're also trying to involve a lot of the mental health professionals that go to that church in kind of the outreach groups, just to see, all right, let's break the stigma, let's break the taboo, and it's okay to come and speak to somebody. It's not like you're spilling all the secrets of your family outside of your family. Now you're going to be disowned and so on and so forth. And if you think about it too, within the church, the priests are practically the therapist of the church. They're overworked and burnt out. So they're like, go to the professionals, go to the ones that, did all they can to get this license. So that's kind of my 20 minutes on that. Marinette, I don't know if you wanted to add.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, Marianne, on a lot of it. I haven't had the chance to see any like Arabs, but I mean, I've worked in different communities where that just hasn't been like an opportunity for me. But even with like other cultures that I see, I mean, I see trauma, which is hard enough, but we, in my practice right now, we don't really like we don't run after the client. If they don't show up, they don't show up. And a lot of times a lot of people don't show up and I have to go to the next person. And a lot of those people are typically, the minorities. It's the Hispanic people, it's the African Americans and things like that. They come in and it's just like, no, I can't do this, or we just don't talk about this, or I'm forced to come in, but I really don't want to. So it's hard. I think it's also important to know that most Arab communities are collectivistic community. So we rely on like our families, the people around us for guidance. The Western world is a lot more individualistic. So I don't care about what my parents think or what does if I need a therapist, like I'm going to go to a therapist versus in a collectivistic household, it's like, well, how is that going to look, to my parents or like, what are they going to say about this and things like that. So when I go to them for guidance, they're telling me just pray about it or, just suck it up. Like you just, go through with it or whatnot. And, if you're relying on the people that are around you, then you're going to be less likely to want to kind of go and seek out the help and things like that. And a lot of families I know also, at least for me, growing up, I was told, you don't let your business go to other people. So if you believe that your business should not go to other people, then you're not going to talk to another person about your problems. The school that I worked at was mainly African Americans, and I had a lot of these kids telling me, like my mom told me not to talk to you. Like we don't talk about our business to other people. So if you grew up hearing that, then you're kind of gonna keep a lot of things inside. But I mean, just like Marianne said, at least in the church, some of the churches are starting to kind of go towards the mental health and talk about it a lot more, which I'm appreciating. But I think we still have a very long way to go. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to shift to talk about how religion and cultural aspects can influence how you think about mental health. And you guys just went right into it. And let's just stay on that just a little bit more. As we know, in our fitness journey, there's Muslims and Christians mixed. But, I'm Christian, so I can speak for the Christian side of this. The church is like the center of the community where you can find your wife there, your husband there, you do your social activities there. I grew up going to church every weekend, so it has a very big influence on your life. So I knew, like, whenever I had issues with problems, traumatic experiences, a lot of the answers I got growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s were go talk to a priest, and it was pray about it and ask for forgiveness. And it was just these simple surface level answers. But and I also saw how my relationships with women also was affected in terms of this very strong stance on how boys and girls should grow up together in the church, and how there should be boundaries, and that can affect your social life. So I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that as well. Have you seen, like, how can it impact people in a negative way? And I like how you mentioned St. Mark's, how they've been like saying, "Hey, you don't need a priest; you need a professional help almost." And maybe I think, and can you answer this question? Do some priests actually go through some professional training when they talk to people? Because some people don't want to go to professional help. The priest is the doctor, the therapist, all in one. What has been your, like? Just talk a little bit more about that.
So hitting on the part about mental health with the priests, we got lucky with Abuna Mark. He has a behavioral health, mental health background, which is wonderful. And since he's come on at our church, he's assisted. And then also Father Elijah, he comes from a physician background. So he also knows the importance and the impact of mental health on physical health, because there's such thing as psychosomatic symptoms, where if your mental health is so poor and it's impacting you so much, it'll start to manifest in physical symptoms. If you have anxiety, increased heart rate, high blood pressure. If you have depression, low mood, very lethargic, weight gain, things like that. So the church fathers, I think, are slowly starting to go more into, let's educate ourselves about the mental health field and the supports that are there. And again, I can only speak to St. Mark on this part because this is the only place I've seen it so far. But they are trying to find those supports. So it's what group group therapy sessions are available to individuals. I know there's kind of an ongoing list the church is trying to bring together of, here are a list of the professionals in our church if you feel comfortable going to them, because that's also another block. I don't want to see anybody that's a professional that's in my church, because what if they slip up? What if they say something they're not supposed to? And then also us as clinicians, we have to make sure we abide by our ethical code of, if there's a dual relationship, as in I have to see them professionally, but then I also know them in more of a friendship or cordial way anywhere else, we have to terminate that as quickly as possible. So there's a lot of conflict of interest there, and we have to be careful with that. So it's definitely, the church fathers are trying to the best they can, but we also have to abide by our rules as well. So we can give to the church only so much while protecting our license and our practice and our ethics. And hitting on the topic of how religion and how kind of the church expectations growing up can impact individuals. I've also heard the, oh, just pray about it, go to a priest, they'll give you the guidance. Yes, that is nice. Yes, the priest has been exposed to hearing a lot of things, and also the sheikh in the Islamic practices as well, and religions. When individuals go to them, a lot of them are talking about their addictions, a lot of them are talking about their depression, their mental health, and their attraction to the certain female or attraction to male. So they've heard a lot of this, but they're also giving a lot of the same answer for a lot of the same things. And yes, the Bible can be very good in guiding, and yes, the Quran can be a great guide for those in the Islamic faith, but there are certain new world situations and concerns and issues that we're facing that it's not clearly spelled out the same exact way like the 10 commandments are. You have these 10, here's step by step. That's not the case right now. So the whole, boys and girls also have to have boundaries. Well, yes, absolutely, but not to the point to where the guys are so nervous on approaching a female and thinking if they have these thoughts, they are the most impure individuals, and vice versa. The females, I cannot approach a male, it is not appropriate or okay, I'll be shunned, my parents will think this, this, and this of me. And in a sense, isolating themselves from the male gender and not really having that socialization with them, and then expecting a husband when it's that age. So it's all these back and forth that are just, it's concerning, it's understanding, but very contradicting at the same time.
Marianne, anything you want to weigh on?
Yeah, I mean, I think Marianne hit a lot of it, but some of the things to touch on, I mean, kind of in terms of kind of like the church and how you grow up with the culture, I mean, it kind of goes a little bit back to how I was about, where most of us are collectivistic, and collectivistic can also include, the church and those that are around you and things like that. So I feel like for a lot of people growing up, mental health, just because it's not talked about, doesn't mean it's not there. That doesn't mean that people are not struggling with it. So when people around them are saying, just, pray about it, or we don't talk about this, or, you're not crazy, are you? Or things like that, that makes people feel, very lonely. I think it reminds me of, there was a retreat a while ago for some of the youth, and they just had a secret, write down things that you're struggling. I don't remember exactly, but I think there were a lot of people who were talking about, how suicidal they were feeling and things like that. And it's there. Like, just because you're not talking about it doesn't mean it's not there. But being told all of your life, like, all of these things about how you should toughen up or not talk about it or just go to God and things like that. Yes, God is great, and going to an Abuna is great for guidance, but no offense to the Abunas, but me and Marianne have done 2 years or more to, get to this profession, and it's hard. There's a lot of different tools and techniques. I feel like a lot of people think that therapy is just someplace you go and just talk about and you're healed and good, but there's a lot more that goes into it, depending on the modality that you use, the type of therapy that you use, the tools that you give. There's a lot more that we provide to help the person, instead of that a priest is just not going to be able to do. He can talk to you about it a little bit, give you some guidance, but it's not going to be, what like a good therapist can do for you.
Are you saying the 40 days in the monastery isn't enough time to help people?
If you're
Unfortunately,
looking for a
not, not.
miracle, you better hope you're a favorite of
Yeah,
God at this point,
yeah,
because the 40, I mean, hey, just to put it in practical perspective too, the 40 days you were consistently doing something. With a priest, you're lucky if you can get in maybe once a month with how busy they are. With a therapist, a psychologist, a licensed social worker, you can see them on a weekly basis, maybe twice a week, things like that. So that
Yeah.
consistency is also very helpful, because sure, it's good to, hey, go read this book in the Bible, or go read this part of the Quran, or the Torah. That's wonderful. And I'll see you in a month and let me know how this changed your life. Well, thank you for giving me the reading. Thank you for giving me the potential guidance, although a lot of it is up for how did I receive this message? It's very central to the individual reading it, and not the, okay, once you've read it, let's do these also practices consistently. Let's do check-ins. Does this work for you? Does this not work for you? The priests just simply don't have time for that. Whereas professionals, licensed clinicians, things like that, doctors, all that, we do. That's literally what we're trained for. It's what we're there to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
wanted
always
to.
say this. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
This is what I always say, like if you're gonna go to a doctor if you have a broken leg, right? There are Christians out there that believe that, if I am sick physically, I'm just gonna pray about it and God will heal me. And I feel like that is the same thing with mental health right now. There are chemical imbalances in your brain, like there are reasons why you are having this disorder or whatnot. So why would you not go to a doctor for that the same way that you go to a doctor for any physical stuff? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that. I preach that to a lot of my clients, especially the ones that are actively experiencing psychosis. Well, I don't need any medication. I'm fine. I'll go through this manic episode and just completely drain out my bank account and ruin all my relationships, but I know I'll come out of it. Well, you'll come out of it and go into a depressed episode. And then there's question to your safety. So why not get that medication to help level you out? And we're not saying you need this forever. This is not a forever you're locked in, unless you want to be that type of client, because they do exist as well. But it's not a forever thing. If you start medication, if you start therapy, we don't want to see you for the rest of our lives. We want to see you get better. Our success stories are quite literally our clients being successful and saying, hey, I think today's the last day, or to maybe next week is the last day we need to meet because I'm feeling pretty solid. But I'll reach out if I need to come back, or if I feel like I need that extra support again. That's the best thing we can hear. I don't know about you, Marinette, but sometimes I enjoy being fired by my clients when they're at their best. That's wonderful. So, yeah.
I wanted to move on to gender bias, gender expectation, and gender roles. And what are the things we must undo and rethink concerning these topics? What should we know when thinking about these things and setting the example for our children? Any thoughts on that?
I think we should just throw the whole book out as far as expectations. And when it comes to those, so I'm gonna speak to it in the context of relationships and marriages. When you go into a relationship and marriage, there are certain talents that you bring in and certain things that you're really good at that when in a healthy situation and relationship, the other person is maybe lacking and they need that support. Or I don't know, let's say they absolutely hate doing laundry, but that's your thing. That's your meditation time. That's what you enjoy doing. All right, that's one task that you can do, but it's not going to become an expectation. There's a difference between these are the things that I bring to the relationship and an expectation that is brought into a relationship. So the whole, oh, the male has to always be the one who's forward, the one that starts everything, the one that plans every single thing, that's going to become exhausting to him. How loved or wanted is a female going to feel if that was the expectation with the roles reversed, where she has to plan every single day, she has to plan every single time they want to go out or hang out? She's not going to want to do that. She's not going to feel loved or wanted. And when it comes to the guy's perspective, You know, the female, yes, she does bring a lot of emotion, a lot of that attention into the relationship based on her personality type and just again what she offers and what she learned growing up. But the male cannot expect her to do the basic female or feminine things or womanly things around the house where it's you're gonna cook, you're gonna clean, you're gonna do the laundry, you're gonna take care of the kids, all this. Oh, after you also just came back from work. If roles were reversed, I am burnt out. I don't know why my wife isn't helping me. These are my responsibilities, but it's exhausting. So the whole men are supposed to be like this. They're supposed to be this machismo, non-emotional thing, very aggressive and approach the women, and the women have to be very shy and I'm gonna hit on this topic too. They have to be virgins, they have to be pure, they have to have the best mindset of me and see me as their king. That is so unbelievably unrealistic and toxic to go into friendships, relationships, and marriages that it's just going to completely tarnish whatever's there. And you're either going to be stuck in that relationship because of, for the sake of a lot of our cultures, there's no such thing as divorce, or you're just going to be unhappy for the rest of your life. Or again, it ends in divorce and you're just going to feel lonely. You feel like, well, what went wrong? Or you start to in a sense question your judgment moving forward. So the whole expectations, I can't stand that word. There should be no expectations. It should be, let's go in and see what we both have to offer for each other. Let's have this conversation of, I lack in this. Are you able to meet me halfway? Or maybe if I'm bringing 30% that day, can you bring the 70? That's great. And switch that around too, just checking in with each other. Because just because, let's say I enjoy doing laundry, my partner, if I come home exhausted one day and there's loads of laundry, and my partner sees that, he shouldn't expect me to have to want to do that with a smile on my face. It's, hey, let me jump in for you because I see you're tired. And that doesn't belittle his manhood or take away his man card. It's thank you so much for hearing me and seeing me that you're choosing to jump in and help me with that.
Yeah. I think we're still trying to live in a world where women stayed at home and didn't work and still setting those expectations. I think, I mean, back then it worked. You know, if a woman is staying at home, then okay, yes, she has time to cook, she has time to clean, to take care of the kids, but it's a different world now. You know, women are also working and, you know, just like Marianne said, it's going to be hard for the woman is going to work an 8 hour day and then come home and cook and clean and all of those things. It's just not a concept that I feel like just works anymore. So there has to be, I think, changes to definitely to that. I've also seen just, you know, that men, not that women can't do it either, but that men can use, you know, that role as kind of like a power and control thing. You know, it does happen in domestic violence situations where, you know, since I'm the man of the house, you know, I control you or I do this, you know, you have to do that. So it can be used for the bad. I think for since we were on the topic of like, you know, partners and things like that, you know, it could be important to consider, you know, what are there are 5 love languages, and I'm sure a lot of people know about that book, but if you haven't, I would definitely suggest reading it. But, you know, one of the love languages is acts of service. So if you know, the female is the one that her love language is acts of service and the husband is not doing any acts of services, then that the female is not going to feel that love from you if that is kind of her top. So, you know, there's a lot of things to consider when it comes to the roles and the biases on who should do this or who should do that. I think it's just about communication with, you know, what should we do together? You know, it's a partnership. It's not this is my job and this is your job. Like, let's sign this contract and get it over with. Like, no, like this is your lifelong partner that you're gonna live with for the rest of your life, you know, and you want it to be a happy one. So I think the communication and just figuring out who does what and how to manage things is kind of the best thing to do.
You know, just one more thing on this. When I was a kid, I was driving in a car with my aunt and my mom and my girl cousins, and then my uncle, who's a man. And the car broke down, and me and my uncle couldn't fix the car on the side of the road. We didn't know what was wrong. And I said out loud to the women in the car, "Oh, we don't know what's wrong." And he told me to stop saying that. He goes, "You never want to tell women that you, as a man, like you don't know what's going on. You want to project safety, security." And that always stuck with me. And I always I growing up, I always tried to keep that saying, I want to like never show women that I don't have control over the situation. And I had to sort of undo that as I got older and more mature and emotionally mature, saying, "Oh, that's such a hot, that's so unrealistic in this world." Um, so I wanted to just go back to the question about how to raise children in a realistic way, removing those gender expectations. Um, in the Arabic world, it's hard because Arabs, okay. Look, it's in my opinion, it's still very taboo to be a homosexual in the Arab world. So fathers want to raise their children in a very manly way because they're scared their children become homosexual. So they're scared when they see the first sign of that. So, what are your thoughts on that about how children are raised with these gender expectations in the Arabic world?
So first I'm gonna hit on your example, and which is a pretty solid example, honestly. And it still happens constantly. Don't let the woman feel like you don't know what you're doing. Don't let them, see you in your panic or things like that. The secret is we can tell, we can read emotion pretty well. No matter how well you feel like you're covering it up, if the female truly knows you, whether it's your mother, sister, a partner, whoever, we have found your baseline. We are constantly reading. We are very emotionally involved, intelligent, observant individuals. So even if you guys don't express the emotion of lack of control or fear or concern, there are certain tells that we can pick up on. So that's one thing I just kind of like to debunk if guys don't fully feel a female can read them or we don't know what's going on. So that's there. The main question of how do we work about raising your kids and that fear of your child growing up to be a homosexual? Shoving gender roles and expectations down a child's throat is not the way to go about it. That's actually, in a way, how you get them to hate that gender or what they're supposed to be. Major quotation marks there. Because if you tell a boy that enjoys playing with dolls, no, you can't do that. You have to play with trucks, cars, all that. He doesn't want to do that. That's not what he finds fun. Maybe he was playing with dolls because he primarily goes to a school or a daycare with a lot of females, and that's his way of blending in with the girls or the kids and making friends. Doesn't mean he's more prone to the female type expectations, and that's what's going to end up happening, whether it does or not. But again, we have to understand why the child is exhibiting that behavior, and telling a girl, no, you're not allowed to. I remember in the schools in Egypt, the uniforms, you're not allowed to wear pants because that's a boy's thing. Well, right now, a lot of the powerful women here, they're wearing pantsuits. They're showing up in leggings or doing whatever it is. That's the fashion now. So forcing a child or withholding something because of your fear of them turning out to be something is you trying to predict what that child's personality is going to be like. Once that baby's born, you don't know if they're going to be the biggest brat that brings hell on you as a parent, or if they're going to be the sweetest angel. So why try to force that or force things on them if you don't actually know what's going to end up happening for them in the future? The biggest thing that I tell a lot of the parents that I work with, because surprise, surprise, I work with kids, but I end up working with the parents a lot more because the parents turn out to be the problem or the main issue. It's you are causing so much anxiety for this child, telling them that they have to do all of these things to make you happy and proud of them to the point to where they don't know who they are. And that leads into that confusion of identity. If they're not able to explore and see what they enjoy, what they hate, what they don't like, and they're just trying to do everything to fit into a role to get that love and that compassion from you, they're not going to have a close relationship growing up, and they're going to turn out to be people pleasers. They're going to turn out to be individuals, again, with severe mental illness and potentially mood disorders and personality disorders because they didn't know what they were supposed to do on their own when they were younger. And now, if they don't have parents to guide them every step of the way, jump forward to 30 years of age, they have no idea what they're doing because they never got to that core part of who am I? Let me figure myself out. So the more you impose the expectations of this is what boys do and this is what girls do, the more harm it's actually going to do in the future for them.
Marynet, any thoughts?
Yeah. So first I'll go into the part about, showing, how a man wants to show that, they're macho or that they know what they're doing and things like that. Um, Apart from the fact that a female or their partner will know, it's also the way that you're showing it. You might not be showing it in a way where, I don't know what I'm doing, but you might be showing it in you getting frustrated and then getting angry at your partner. You're going to show it in different ways. I think this conversation also came up a lot in the chat, just, in talking about emotions and things like that in general. I think a lot of people think that, or a lot of men think that, if I'm bottling it up and I'm keeping it cool and I'm just doing what I need to do, that, we're good and my partner will never find out. Like, no, she's gonna find out. But she's gonna find out in how stressed you look when you come home from work, or how irritated you get at every little thing, or just how you react to things that she says or things that she does. And it will affect the relationship whether you like it or not. So you think that you're not actually, showing it and you're doing a great job, and maybe you just have a little anger here and there and things like that, but that is how you are showing it. So I feel like it's just better to communicate it than to just bottle it up and then it come out in different ways. So that was just my 2 cents about that. And then when it comes to just like raising children, I think Marianne made a good point. And the future, you're never gonna know what's gonna happen. You teaching your daughter how to change a tire is not gonna turn her into a transgender or whatever. But when she is stuck in the middle of the road all alone with a flat tire, she's going to know what to do. There's In the Arab culture, most of us live at home until we get married. So if you are a man that has been living at home all your life and mom has been cooking for you, and your wife then goes on a trip for a week and is not home, and you don't know how to cook. Now you don't know how to do your laundry. Now you don't know how to do this. It's just basic important things that everyone should know. So it's okay if your daughter's the one taking out the trash and your son is the one that's cooking with mom. Like, that should be normalized, because in the end, you never know when there's going to be a time where you're going to have to do that just to do that. It doesn't dictate how you're going to be, or that you might end up turning to the other side of the gender or whatnot. No, it's just basic skills that you'll learn, and then when it comes time, you might have to actually do it.
Well said. Moving along, because we are running out of time, I wanted to get into one of the last topics before we get into how we can start helping ourselves. So we talked today about self. Whoever's in the chat, just please in the room, just please mute yourselves. Second, guys. There you go. Sorry about that. Okay. Let's talk about self-awareness. Okay. I shared in the chat that later, I felt I was emotionally mature around the age of 33. I'm 37 right now. I felt I was very late in life to becoming mature. And I shared that I started really practicing self-awareness habits after a breakup I went through. So I just want to talk about self-awareness. we all say self-awareness is important, but what are some self-awareness best practices? How to actually do it? I kind of had to figure it out on my own. But in your perspective, in your advice, how would you advise us to do self-awareness on our in our lives?
So I guess I'd ask for a little more clarification. Are you talking about self-awareness with your own mental health and the state you're in, or how it's impacting relationships?
Can you cover both
Sure,
briefly?
yeah.
Yeah.
When
Okay.
it comes to just being self-aware about your own mental health and where you're at, genuinely just checking in with yourself. The same way you'll text a friend that you haven't seen in a while or has been really quiet. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? Do that with yourself. It is not bad. You're not crazy. You're not weird for talking to yourself. Again, the same way we also, when we pray, where it's in a sense you're talking to yourself, but you feel like you're talking to a or second person. So just saying, how am I feeling today? And let me do, there's something called the 5 grounding techniques where you check in okay, where's my body at today? Am I feeling anxious? Do I feel like I have an increased heart rate? Is it stress? Am I stressed about something? And start chipping away at that list of what could it be? If you already have a diagnosis, let's say you have a diagnosis of depression, and that morning you're absolutely struggling to get out of bed or really have any motivation to just do the basic tasks of hygiene. Okay, what's going on? How am I feeling right now? What are the thoughts that I'm having? How am I talking toward myself right now? Am I a friend or am I being my biggest enemy right now? So definitely checking in with your thoughts, how you see yourself, how you perceive yourself, and then also checking to see what potentially has been draining a lot of your energy. Have you been putting too much time into work? Have you been putting too much time into friendships where you're in the 2 seconds that you're off, you're doing everything you can to hang out with people and have fun to show them you're here, and then bam, you're exhausted and you're doing it all over again. So how are you preserving your energy and how are you prioritizing yourself? Because that's really what it comes down to being self-aware. Are you prioritizing yourself in a healthy manner to where you're not being selfish and holding yourself away from everybody because you feel like you're too good or nobody's worth your time? But instead it's, am I taking care of my basic needs? And those basic needs are simply, am I eating well? What's my diet and health like? And how are my thoughts toward myself? Am I being horribly mean to myself as if the world already hasn't done enough? And the other part is, okay, emotionally, where am I at? Where am I at? Um, not everybody agrees with the emotional part, which is fair. But when it comes to the emotional part, it's what have I consistently been experiencing whenever I'm in this mood or whenever I'm in this rut? And then also check in with yourself during your higher moments. What am I doing right? Why do I feel good right now? What's going on? What's going well for me? In our higher moments, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just got my master's. I studied so hard. I did great. And then the next thing is, oh, I just failed an exam. Well, that was stupid of me. Why didn't I study harder? Why didn't I do better? So completely different sides of yourself come out during those times. So also check in when you're doing your best and you're at your highest. And then when it comes to self-awareness with relationships, it's, let's say you're stuck in a pattern and you're starting to lose friends, or you're starting to get into a lot of issues or conversations, negative conversations with coworkers, staff, things like that. It's now becoming a pattern. It's not an isolated thing to where, oh, it's just them. It's no, let me check to see what I've been doing. What have I been putting into this relationship, into this conversation? And what could have potentially either been misunderstood, miscommunicated, or what is something that I'm actively doing in every single scenario that has not been the healthiest and has not allowed me to maintain these positive friendships and relationships? So it's, well, maybe I talk too much about myself and I don't actually ask the other person. When they ask me, hey, how are you doing? I give them my answer and they're sitting there waiting for me to ask them and I don't. Well, I'm being selfish. Let me be more aware of that individual. If it's my mental health impacting the friendship or relationship or work relationship, okay, I feel like my depression takes a lot. A lot of the friends are, doing, going above and beyond in the friendships. A lot of the coworkers are helping a lot. And then during my good moments, I'm not doing anything really different. I'm still fully dependent on them. Well, that's exhausting. That's burning them out. So let me figure out what I can also attribute during those times. So that's where self-awareness can go into those different types of relationships.
Yeah. I think just for both in general, I mean, it could be good to just check in with yourself, if it's every night or, at the end of a week or things like that. I mean, if journaling is maybe part of your thing, just journal. I know there's one thing is like rosebud thorn, so it's like good thing that happened, maybe a bad thing that happened, something I can work on, and just checking in, with yourself. I think checking in with your body and seeing, where how you're feeling and things like that. Um, a lot of people, I think, when it comes to their emotions, don't know how to identify their emotions. I think a lot of us just have maybe 3 or 4 basic ones. I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm hungry, whatever it might be. I would suggest looking up the emotions wheel. I think it's a really good wheel that helps kind of narrow down what you're feeling. Like, am I actually happy, or maybe I'm content? Maybe I'm hopeful. Am I angry, or am I actually, furious? Just being able to identify, what emotions did I have during this day or during this week can really hone in on that. I think another important thing is also just, listen to the people around you. Notice what they're saying, if they're coming to you with something, to help you kind of gain some awareness. I think a lot of people might not be receptive. A lot of us might um, you know, kind of back down, back out, or get angry and be like, what do you mean? What are you saying? Like, no, I don't do this. But, sometimes it's, taking in what people, especially in a relationship, I think that part, the other person can help you a lot in being self-aware. If you guys sit down together and notice, is there what's going good in this relationship, what do we need to work on, and things like that. What do I need to work on, what do you need to work on, and going from there. So I think it's just a lot of just evaluating, yourself, and not forgetting to do that, because I mean, I don't think I even do that, and maybe I should start.
Yeah. So
And then I
we're
just
running
wanted to give credit where credit is due. Shandy, you wrote something great as well. Identifying your triggers. Absolutely. You know you best, at least the internal you. Like Marinette said and hit on it really well. Your partner can also help, family members can also help. But if you find yourself getting to work frustrated every single day because there's this one coworker that just rubs you the wrong way, or they're too much of a morning person and they're super loud, that could be a simple trigger. Even though that's their personality, setting up that boundary of, hey, look, I understand your intentions are all good, you just want to say good morning and start up and check in and everything, but I need a couple minutes before starting my day. So identifying that trigger, so you're not blowing up at the employee or coworker and you end up in HR. So that's just kind of like a vague example maybe that we can cover for triggers.
Yeah. Well, we are running out of time, but you hit on the next question I had, and then we'll open up for questions and answers. Um, we had an interview earlier this month with Dr. Susan Solomon, and she said something in the interview I remembered. She goes, if you're depressed, one of the first things I recommend is just go outside, go for a walk outside. She said it was a very practical tip. So I wanted to pose the same question to you both here today. What are some practical things we can do to improve our mental health?
So outside of course, seeking out professional help if you feel comfortable doing so, definitely the going outside. Funny enough, or ironically enough, the opposite of depression is doing everything that it keeps you from doing. So working out gives you a heck of a lot of dopamine. Like, you are going to be on top of it. If you enjoy cardio, if you enjoy running, doing that, being outside in the sun, that's why there's something called seasonal depression. It hits far harder in the winter than it does in the summer because the sun's out and you want to be outside, you have more motivation. If you're anxious, or you're just constantly nervous, or you feel like you have panic attacks, things like that, okay, let's slow things down rather than rushing to get everything done that you're worried about or stressing about. Slow down. There's definitely the meditation. If you just enjoy sitting in silence or even just having background noise, or sitting outside listening to the birds chirp, especially in the morning, things like that. Just giving yourself that minute. If you feel like you struggle for struggle with sitting still, you don't have to sit still to meditate. If you fidget, I fidget a lot. As you guys have seen, I talk with my hands a lot. So having a fidget tool, things like that, helps with anxiety, helps with ADHD. If you're trying to meditate and have that moment, sometimes for me, I have a routine of I need to have my coffee every morning. So it's that routine of making my coffee, getting that smell, just being in the present moment. That is super important because right now, nowadays, we're always thinking of what's next, what I have to do next, what's going on. We're not, okay, right now, I just woke up, I'm getting ready for work. Not going to be the best day, or it's going to be the best day. I'm making my cup of coffee, let me enjoy this. So being in the present moment, meditation, yoga, I really love yoga. I've been enjoying it. It's something new that I started. It just helps you become more aware with your body. It's amazing. I'd say Krav Maga, but I got beat up pretty bad professionally. So doing any sports like that, intense sports, the deep breathing exercises. There's something called box breathing that's practiced in the military and taught in the military, where you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for eight, breathe in for four, hold it for four, breathe out for eight. The reason the exhale is more important is because you're putting a lot more control and effort into the exhale, because you want to gasp in for air again, but you slowly forcing it out helps you, again, ignore everything that's going on in your mind and focus on your body, because now your body's like, oh my gosh, what's happening? I'm not breathing correctly. So immediately you're going back to, let me just make sure I can breathe right. So that's where that deep breathing practice helps too. And then Marinette also mentioned journaling. For those that are the more creative side, there's the just arts, just randomly painting or drawing something. I've been really into those diamond paintings. I just kind of let my mind go and focus on getting those little tiny circles into the spots they're supposed to go. So whatever you enjoy, your hobbies are a form of treatment for yourself, because these are things that you have actively put time into because you enjoy doing them. So the biggest thing is doing something you enjoy, doing something that's not going to burn you out. So
Yeah.
that's my
I have a friend, he's in his mid-30s guy, and we would, whenever he got anxious or stressed out, he would pull out uh, a coloring book and he would
Mhm.
color.
Yeah.
And it's just his way of relaxing and resetting. Something simple as coloring within the lines of a picture.
Mhm.
And it was just very, it was eye-opening for me. I also want to say that you mentioned breathing. I agree with you. We have a breathing seminar at the end of the month we're hosting. So whoever's interested in the room here, they can go ahead and connect to that event we have. But Marianette, any advice on how practical things we can do at home to improve our mental health?
Yeah, I think a lot of those are good. I think that the journaling, checking in with your emotions, I think it's very important. Maybe your next seminar will talk about this, but when it come, maybe it's not it's part of box breathing, but it's also called diaphragmatic breathing. I don't, you might have heard of it, but a lot of people when they breathe in, they suck their stomach in. You're supposed to suck it out because that's what activates your parasympathetic system, which is your rest and digest. So, yeah, I think for anxiety, there's a lot of meditations online. There's a really great app that's similar to Calm. It's called Smiling Mind. It's an evidence-based app. I use it with a lot of my clients. So that one is a really good one. Just like Marianne mentioned, I mean, with depression, you have a lack of motivation to do things. So to get out of the depression, you push yourself to get out of that. So whether it's exercise, exercise is really great. I mean, it was actually my dissertation. So I've found a lot of research that says that exercise really helps with depression and anxiety and all of that, or just doing something that you just love, like anything that you like to do, just adding that into your day, even if it's for 5 minutes, can make the world of a difference into making just like your day just a lot better. I think I'm forgetting all the other ones, but I mean, there's a lot of self-help books out there now, just being able to or audiobooks if you don't like sitting down and reading. and just finding different things like that. I think I lost all the other ones. I'm sorry, but I know we're running out of time.
I just wanted to jump in really quickly about the self-help books. Please do not self-diagnose yourself. If you're reading a book because you think you're borderline and you haven't been given that diagnosis, please don't do that. That's very dangerous. But there are a lot of strong self-help books, like, how to identify your toxic traits, how to identify so many other things. Just don't do one specifically for a certain diagnosis that you have not been given. See somebody like Marinette who can give the diagnosis and see a therapist that could maybe support that. Just putting that out there. I've seen a lot of my clients go down a rabbit hole thinking they have multiple personality disorder, and all it is it's just the voice in their head telling them right from wrong. Just yeah.
Oh,
Great.
that does remind me of one actually. So a lot of times if you're really stuck into your thoughts, I think Marianne mentioned it a little bit, but there's a really great technique saying the five senses grounding scale. It is a lot for, I use it a lot with my trauma clients who might have flashbacks and memories, but it's also a really good one to just help you get out of your head. And it really just tells you, to become centered and just come to the present moment. And basically, you identify 5 things you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. So just being able to kind of notice those things around you and just bringing you back if you're kind of just stuck in your head and things like that. So that's an easy one that I really like giving tools. So if you haven't noticed.
I've never heard of that. Thank you for sharing. After this call, I'm probably going to go research that because I love this kind of stuff. Before I open it to questions and answers, one of the books that I'm sure you two have heard of that changed my life is called The Body Keeps the Score. I love that book, and I can't recommend it enough. It helped me in my own life in terms of how I think about things. But enough of me rambling. Let me open up the room because we're running out of time. Whoever wants to ask Marianette or Marianne a question, please unmute yourselves and go on video if you like. And I just want to give a shout out to, we have a person in the room named Marianne Gabriel, and I was told she's a mental health clinician as well. So thank you for joining and welcome to our group. So yeah, whoever would like to ask a question, please unmute yourselves and ask the question now.
So I got a private question that hopped in real quick. So the question was, let me go back. Are things discussed between a therapist and client private from anyone, including spouses, family, other professionals, etc.? Yes, absolutely. Here's the caveat. If you sign something called a release of information with any of like the therapist or psychologist, psychiatrist, you have officially given permission to that professional to speak to whoever you have listed on that document. The other caveat is we will keep all of your information private and secured and locked away, not from anyone else, unless we have or any concern is brought up where there's safety concern to yourself or others. So if we are worried that you might go and harm yourself after this session, we are then we're protected under HIPAA and ethics and all of that. We can go to law enforcement. We can reach out to family members that we're aware of. If it's potential risk of harm to others, again, same process, but we can only disclose minimal information at that time just to make sure you're back into a safe space, you're stable, you're okay. And then again, it returns to you are fully protected. That is the only reason we would ever break confidentiality with a client. So just putting that out there. But in general, yes, your information is fully protected.
And any subpoenas. That's
Yes.
the one.
Would anyone like to ask Marianne or Marianette a question? Unmute yourselves and feel free to ask.
If we don't have questions, I had a couple of people send me a couple questions as well. Just gonna pull them
Yeah,
up.
go ahead.
So this one was worded funny enough, which started another conversation in the group. It's how do you know you're dating a narcissist? Narc. I'm sure you recall that, Anthony. So when it comes to narcissists, A lot of it is they will do everything to protect themselves, protect their image, and they will go above and beyond, again, for themselves. It's very selfish reasons. They're trying to obtain something to benefit them. So if you feel like you're constantly the one in a relationship just giving all at all times, and you don't feel that it's being reciprocated to where it's they're able to and they're actively choosing not to, and again, there's potential manipulation of emotions and things like that. And when I say that, it's, oh, hey, yeah, I really thought about getting this for you, and I know you really need it. Let's say you were sick. I really thought about it, but it would have just been so inconvenient for me to drive to the store before getting home because I was so tired. And, I can't show up having bags under my eyes tomorrow. It's that type of comment or that feedback that you get that it doesn't say this is like a solid narcissist, but again, it's identifying, is the individual you're dating or the individual you're in a marriage with constantly elevating themselves above you? Are they always on this constant agenda of, I'm going to better myself for the sake of me and not for the sake of we, not for the sake of the relationship? It's me, me, me. So that's a really big sign. Marinette, I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, even more than just with you, I mean, people that have narcissistic personality disorder, it's usually with everyone. There's just a high
Mhm.
level of I'm the greatest, and it's like more than confidence. It's just like you are all beneath me, and just everything is, for me. I've worked a lot with it. I mean, I can't diagnose my clients' partners, but I have had a lot of clients who their partners probably
Um,
have narcissistic
the
personality
wrong people are
disorders.
in therapy.
Yeah,
That's all I can
those are
say.
the hardest people to definitely
Yes.
get into therapy and all of
Mhm.
that. But yeah, I mean, I can go into the more of the domestic violence part of it, but that's gonna take another hour.
Well,
So
actually,
I'm
this
gonna-
kind of segues into another question, so it would be good to hit on it. The other question I got was, can you explain the difference between love bombing and knowing when a man is just sentimental? So at least I can speak to my experience in working with domestic violence offenders and victims. Of course, they were all court ordered, and we did have multiple individuals who had narcissism. And the difference between love bombing and just genuine acts, sentimental, loving acts from a male or a female, is there's kind of this cycle that they hit on. It's they just did something that could drastically impact their relationship, whether it's physical, emotional, verbal, or sexual abuse. And now it's, I see what I just did and I fear the consequence of that action. So let me just make this moment right now the best moment of your life. Let me get you all the flowers, the massive bouquets, all the chocolates, everything you love. That right there is love bombing. They're trying to make up for something without fully saying sorry or being apologetic for it, and they're going to repeat that behavior again. It's not that they're doing all this because they feel sorry and they really mean it. It's, let me just fix this real quick so she forgets all about it, but I'm not going to do anything after that. I'm not going to continue to work on myself after that. And again, same with she toward he. She will give him all the attention. She'll make him feel like the man and that, he's her king and all of that. But again, she's not going to fix that behavior or that action. So love bombing kind of comes in major spurts. It's not a continuous sporadic thing where it's, oh, I was thinking of you when I passed when I passed this. I'm obsessed with Harry Potter. I saw this hot topic. It's a Harry Potter thing. I thought of you when I saw it, so I got this for you. Oh, thank you so much. He didn't do anything to make me mad. He didn't do anything to probably mess up the relationship or completely break it. It's because he thought of me. But if he's buying me all these things because I'm mad at him or things like that, and again, there's no benefit to him doing this and him fixing his behavior afterwards, that's where that love bombing comes into play.
Yeah. So it's basically just noticing, what is the reason for their, gifts or love bombing or whatever it is, in the domestic violence that she was talking about, the cycle, that's usually called the honeymoon phase right after the abuse happened. And it's to keep them in there, if I just keep hitting you and I never, profusely apologize and buy you flowers and things like that, why are you gonna stay? People in domestic violence situations stay because, you know, they remember all the good times. They remember the honeymoon phase. They remember the calm phase. You know, that's the part that's gonna make them stay in that relationship. So am I getting these gifts because, you know, they're trying to, I mean, another part of domestic violence is, you know, there's a thing called the power and control wheel. It's, you know, a lot of it is, you know, having that power and control over the person. So are they getting it because they have some hidden agenda? Is that what the love is coming from? Or it's just like Marianne said, is it just like, you know, something I thought of you and I really wanted to share this with you, or I was thinking about you, things like that.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions before we wrap up here with Marianne and Marynet?
There's one more that I had. If you guys, I see Nora also put in that she has one. Nora,
Yes.
feel free to unmute or type in the chat, whichever.
Mhm.
But one, and this came up in the group again, as well a while back, which is funny enough what caused the conversation between you and I, Anthony. It's how can we get our partners to open up about their mental health? You cannot force somebody to speak about their most vulnerable moments. You cannot force somebody to speak about what triggers them or what concerns they have. Oh, I just covered it. Sorry, just between Nora and I. So when it comes to wanting to make somebody or your partner make them talk about their mental health, it's really where you have to hold up a mirror and see and say, am I creating a safe space for them to where it's okay for them to share this? Are they able to be vulnerable with me, both with their mental health or their emotions, or just, again, just speaking about their day? Because if that environment isn't there, if they don't feel comfortable and they don't feel that you're going to respect their emotions or respect what they're experiencing, there is absolutely no way the individual will open up to you. And it could be with even a best friend. If a best friend doesn't feel like you can be there to support them after they've just, you know, poured their heart out, forget it. They're not going to open up. And that's why, as clinicians, we are taught for the longest time in our programs active listening. We do not interrupt the individual when they're pouring their heart out, when they're bringing things into session. We do not judge. The biggest things, we cannot use words of judgment. We can't tell them, oh, I know exactly how that feels. Whether we went through the same situation or not, we do not compare traumas. We do not compare situations. So are you actively doing these things in your relationship to where your partner feels comfortable sharing about their mental health? And if they don't, it could potentially be they're seeing a therapist and they're getting that part of whatever they want to discuss out, and maybe they don't want to bring it into the relationship because they're concerned of how it might impact it. So they're seeking out that professional or religious guidance when it comes down to it. Or they're working on it and maybe they're just not ready to speak about it yet. It could be they're embarrassed, they don't want you to know just yet. Maybe you haven't noticed or you don't know, and they just don't want to bring it up. So it's the environment, and maybe they're already talking about it somewhere else in a professional setting. And if it hasn't negatively impacted the relationship, again, it shouldn't be something that's forced into conversation. That's the biggest thing that's going to push the individual away, whether it's male or female.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marianne?
Yeah, sorry. Why am I losing my train of thought? Um,
No. Well, just to give you a second to recall what you were going to say. I once knew a girl in a very abusive relationship, and physically abusive. And her family members would say to her, "Why are you with him? Why are you with him? And leave." And then later on in life, they reflected on that and they said, "We wish we listened more, we're more supportive, rather than putting this pressure on her in that moment to leave that abusive relationship." They felt they could have went on that a different way. So it just really hit on what you were saying, that what you were saying, Marianne, in terms of listening more and just being supportive. Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead, Marianne.
I think the important part that Marianne did hone in on, though, is yes, you can't control what someone says to you, or you can't make someone do something that they don't want to. You can control what you say, what you do, but you can never control like the other person, because you'll have people come into therapy and be like, well, I'm here because I want my husband to do this. It's like,
Mhm.
no, you're the one that's here in front of me. So we can work on what you can do, but you can never get your husband to do anything. But other than the ones that Marianne hit on, I think it's also, just like we talked about, I mean, we're here because our culture and men, learn that, don't talk about your emotions and don't do this and don't do that. So if that is, what is happening, and you're trying to get your husband that has learned all of these years, don't man up and you can't talk about your emotions and things like that, it's going to be very hard to get them to talk about it. And they might be stuck in their way for the rest of your life. So I think it's also important to just consider, now knowing that, I might not be able to change him. And I think people going into relationship to change someone else is never a good idea. So maybe it is something to think about of, this person is not going to therapy to talk about it or anything like that. They're not talking to anyone. They're not talking to me. Is this the type of person that I want to be with for the rest of my life? So I think that's an important thing to consider too. And I think there's one question in the chat.
This will have to be the last question because we have a hard stop at 8:50. So sorry, last question, guys, from Shady. How do you get through to a client who is not compliant with meds and can't recognize he needs treatment?
So you're getting into my territory now as a crisis therapist with emergency services. If we're talking in the context of this person just walked into my session or my therapy room and they don't even want to be there, they're not court mandated. So if they don't comply, nothing happens to them legally, they're not going to jail, and they're just being forced by family, we cannot legally or ethically force them to stay in that room, and we cannot force them to take their medication, even if whether they're taking it or not, and it's completely vital to their mental health. Like if they have schizophrenia, if they have bipolar, manic, whatever it is, we cannot force them in any capacity. However, if they show up in the state of Virginia, and I can only speak to the state of Virginia, specifically Loudoun County, they're brought in by family or they're brought in by the police, and I see that they meet one of the three criterias of their potential risk of harm to themselves, so suicidal ideation, thoughts, actions, or harm to self or suicide attempts. Second one is potential risk of harm to others. They have either physically actively assaulted or attempted to hurt somebody, or they're making threats. Or the third one, the inability to maintain their own safety, provide for their own basic needs, and they generally lack capacity, which means they're not eating, they're not sleeping, they're experiencing psychosis. They believe that the FBI is after them and they have to drive to Canada because that's the safest, and so on and so forth. Just a couple examples. That is where, if I see any of those criteria to where I am not comfortable sending them home, I then petition the state with the magistrate of Loudoun County for a temporary detention order. What that will do is they will be rendered into the custody of law enforcement, and they will have to stay in that emergency room. So essentially their rights are taken away. They're not allowed to leave, and they're then provided mental health treatment once we've been able to place them on an inpatient unit. When I say that, people are like, oh no, loony bins, psychiatric unit, that's crazy, that's intense. That is what they need to re-regulate, and that is the safest place they can be because they're being monitored 24/7. Because at this point, they're not safe to be in the community without that monitoring. But even then, if they're under that court order, they have to be there for 72 hours. They still cannot be forced to take medication. But before those 72 hours end, they have a court hearing, a mental health-based court hearing with a special justice, an attorney that's going to represent their decision on whether they want to stay or leave. And they're going to be reevaluated again to see, were those 72 hours enough treatment for them? Did they figure out what was going on and they complied with treatment? Or does the court need to force them in for another 30 days? Once that hearing happens, it's in the hands of the special justice. It's then a mental health legal matter. And if the special justice says, hey, you need to stay in this hospital, so I'm going to court order you to stay here, you're not allowed to leave, or else you're contempt of a court order and you can be arrested, then they can go ahead and push for something called, funny names called MOO, med over objection, where the nursing staff, if approved by the courts, the nursing staff can inject medication into the individual's arm or wherever they feel is necessary against their objection. And that ensues a lot of trauma in the mental health field, and it terrifies people and they never want to go back. They never want to reach out for help again. But that is only approved in such intense levels. I mean, we had an individual that had the entire inpatient unit in a hostage situation. There was no other way. He had to be given Ativan, which is a sedative. There was no other option there. Other individuals beating up other patients. So now it's impacting the safety of everybody else. So that is genuinely the only way we can force any medication or treatment on anyone in the state of Virginia. Marinette, I don't know if you know any other loopholes or ways outside of.
Well, in non-crisis outpatient
Yeah.
places, it's voluntary. I'm not going to run after you. I'm not going
Yeah.
to force you into treatment. For the most part, if you don't show up, then I just go on to the next person.
Yeah.
However, if they are still going into treatment but are just non-compliant, there is a type of therapy called motivational interviewing. And I mean, this takes an hour long just to talk about it, but basically it's just seeing their level of willingness to change and trying to see if you can shift that for them to be more motivated through just kind of asking them questions and helping them to realize on their own by seeing, you know, what is that going to be like for you 10 years from now if you're not complying or not taking your medications and things like that, and just kind of trying to shift their focus without being like, no, this is bad, you need to do this, you need to do that. So there is a type of treatment for that to kind of help with that. However, unless it is like a crisis like Marianne was talking about, it is voluntary, and it's kind of just, you know, up to you. You're an adult and you make your own decisions. So if you don't want the treatment, you don't have to get it.
Mhm.
Thank you. Well, that's our time today. I see some people are still trying to enter the room. Yeah, well, I can't wait to put this on YouTube. It'll be available this week. And I want to send you both a sincere thank you for doing this for our group. I know this is going to be well received because we're talking about mental health in these chats in some way every single day. So this was very helpful to me personally as well, this discussion. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this for us. And I hope you all enjoyed, whoever's with us today in this room. And if you have any questions, reach out to Marianne or Marynet in private DM. I'm sure they'll be happy to help you with answer any questions that was unclear in this interview today. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your night and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you guys for having us. Bye. Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Take care.